Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Sneha Roo. I'm a palliative physician and founder of Ori Kalankini. Ori Kalankini is an organization that's changing narratives around menstruation using art, theatre, and dialogue. This series is called Leaning into the Network, where we're bringing people from different parts of our network to meet each other through transfer of skills. Today we have Anukhya, the founder of BeyondBlood. Anukhya is PMDD peer support provider for International Association for Premenstrual Disorders. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and MSc in health economics at University of York, where she exclusively worked on economics of mental health, heterodox perspective with application on gender and intersectionality. Hi Anukhya, welcome.
Hello.
Yeah. Anukhya, can you please tell us what you're doing currently?
Currently, I was supposed to start my PhD at IIHMR in Jaipur, but as we know, COVID-19 started and the quarantine didn't let me start that. So I'm working with the state government on COVID-19 strategies for now. And I put my research on pause, especially understanding the loss of quali. Quali is the quality of life. When women suffer from menstrual disorders or reproductive disorders or even premenstrual disorders. Essentially trying to map Moore's menstrual questionnaire and understand the loss of quality of life across ages.
That's amazing. You're also the founder of BeyondBlood. Can you tell us a little about what BeyondBlood does?
BeyondBlood exclusively focus on menstrual mental health movement. We have two aspects to our menstrual mental health movement, as you can see in the screen that you're sharing. One is research and development, the other one is training and workshop. We train mental health professionals, gynecologists, HRs, managers, and individuals to understand PMDD, PMS, and PME. So that,
yeah,
yes?
Go ahead, please.
All right. So that individuals can manage their own PMDD or PMS or PME, whereas mental health professionals, gynecologists, and HRs can understand, diagnose, and treat or make reasonable adjustment for people at workplaces.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll just announce that we are live on Facebook. So people who want to ask questions, please type in your questions using the chat box. Last 15 minutes will be to answer the questions only. So I'll hand over the mic to you, Anukhya. You can take over from here and do the webinar. Thank you.
Anyone who finds it very hard to look at the screen, I shared a link where the PowerPoint presentation is connected so that you don't have any accessible issues. I also made sure that the colors in the PPT are colorblind friendly too. So there's nothing to worry about.
Do let me know if you need any help. Anukhya? Yeah. Anuja, are you here? So we lost Anuja. So we request her to.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's so much better. All right, I'm going to start off again. So when we talk about menstruation and mental health, we can't just focus on premenstrual disorders. We have to look at menstruation from a more of life cycle approach. So that's why we start off with menarche, menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause. So as you can see in this extensive flow chart, which gives you an overview of menstruation and mental health. In between, you have the menstruation and mental health. Then you have pregnancy and post-pregnancy mental health. Then you have menopause and mental health. Then you see that menstruation and mental health stems into 4 different directions. One is reproductive disorders, one is menstrual disorders, one is endocrine disorders, and premenstrual disorders. In endocrine disorders, we essentially look at PCOS, thyroid, diabetes, and gestational diabetes. In menstrual disorders, we look at dysmenorrhea. Dysmenorrhea is essentially period pain. We have 2 types, primary and secondary. One of the most interesting thing about mental health and period pain is that the cyclical period pain that women experience or menstruating individuals experience literally changes the neural pathways of their brain, which makes them more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and leads to low or decreased level of pain threshold. We have amenorrhea, menorrhagia as well in menstrual disorders. In reproductive disorders, the most researched link is endometriosis and mental health, because endometriosis is a very debilitating condition that affects somebody's life to a great extent. In this session, since BeyondBlood exclusively focuses on premenstrual disorders, we're going to be looking at PMS, PMDD, and PME. What we're going to do is we're going to understand the differences between PMS, PMDD, and PME. We're also going to look at how the terms originated, what made PMS and PMDD such a big taboo in both medical field as well as in social discourse. So PMS is actually considered very common among women. More than 80% of women experience PMS, and there are approximately 150 different PMS symptoms that one can experience. But the most common ones are bloating, water retention, breast tenderness, irritability, anxiety, increased sensitivities to stimulus. What makes PMDD really stand out from PMS is that the extent of debilitating symptoms. And one of the worst things about PMDD is that it causes severe emotional distress, and it also causes severe physical symptoms, including increased sensitivity to light, noise, touch. It also causes extreme pain, swelling, joint pains, tenderness, overall fatigue, suicidal ideation. Suicidal ideation is one symptom that really stands out when it comes to PMDD. Now, what differentiates PMDD from PME is one specific thing. PME is when somebody has an underlying condition. Let's say they have depression or anxiety. It tends to exacerbate during the premenstrual cycle. And the reason why it happens is because there are some pathways that makes people more susceptible to existing illnesses during their premenstrual cycle.
there need to be a complete understanding of the differential diagnosis. Often women are either misdiagnosed with PMDD or they're misdiagnosed with PME. We need to clearly do a differential diagnosis to understand exactly whether somebody has PMDD or PME. And that's very important because it has a huge trajectory to somebody's treatment and their lives. The next thing you see are just a couple of slides that we used on our Instagram page, which contain information about PMS, PMDD, and PME, the differential diagnosis, as well as PMDD and suicidal ideation. Like I said before, a lot of women, even whether they are premenopausal, they do report PMS symptoms, and there are over 150 symptoms. There is no specific treatment. When I say treatment, I mean pharmacological intervention, such as medication, when it comes to PMS symptoms. They're usually asked to be managed through lifestyle changes. Either reduced alcohol consumption, or eat more vegetables, or move a bit, exercise, yoga. All of these things are considered to be lifestyle changes, which can help manage PMS. So the most interesting part is the origins of PMS. Believe me or not, there was a point of time when women's body was so pathologized that PMS was actually used as defense in 2 different murder trials, where the women were exonerated because they were under a trance or in some sort of rage, because of which they killed somebody, and it was acceptable, because of which set a huge precedent for the current jokes on PMS and PMDD. You see that initially what happened is that when it came to PMS, it was described as PMT, which is essentially premenstrual tension. They said it was because of hormonal dysfunction, or they said that, women were just hysteric because they have a uterus, or they also said that women produced a toxin called menotoxin, which they absorbed through their menstrual blood, and they had all these symptoms. And what they did is they used menotoxin to literally justify every single thing that women experience: postpartum depression, diabetes, asthma, every single thing they related it to menotoxin. Eventually, in the 1960s, when the birth control pill was introduced, the pharmaceutical industry decided that, we're going to use the birth control pill as a cure for PMS. There were also many other cures that were sold for PMS, including taking mercury, which is, by the way, poisonous. There were so many quacks out there trying to sell PMS cures because women were just too desperate. It wasn't until the 1900s where PMS and PMDD were separately identified. DMS is a statistic manual for diagnostic of psychiatric disorders. So at that time, PMDD was considered as a psychiatric disorder, which a lot of third wave feminists did not like, because they felt like the men, or the men of science, were just trying to make something that only women experience as a disease, as a disorder, as a psychiatric condition, to differentiate the experience of men and women, which third wave feminists thought was very unfair. So a lot of psychologists at that time did not recognize PMDD for one fact that it was used to literally jail women, put them in psychiatric facilities for every single thing. If a man wanted to leave his wife, he would just take her to a psychiatric asylum and be like, she has PMDD, and I cannot live with her anymore. And then they should just restrain them. And we all know, like in the 1900s, how bad the mental health treatments were. So that is one of the reasons why PMDD did not gain so much traction, because women themselves did not want to talk about it, did not want to acknowledge it. Body image and menstrual cycle. So most of the research that you see, especially when it comes to PMS, the research shows there's a significant impact of negative body image during the premenstrual phase, because you already feel bloated and you have a negative bias. Women tend to feel very negatively about their body. Their perceptions are completely changed. Their response to sex also changes. The orgasms are not as strong as they can be premenstrually. That's because the cervix position also changes throughout the menstrual cycle. So all these things affect their body image because sex does not feel good. You're bloated and you have all this pain and this general unpleasantness and irritability, which makes it very hard. So one of the reasons why we brought up body image is that it's something that a lot of women generally struggle with, especially somebody I think that a lot of people at one point of time did suffer some degree of body image issues or some degree of eating disorders. So it's very important to understand during your premenstrual phase that your metabolism is also increasing. So when you're binge eating or when you're eating something extra, you don't have to feel guilty about it because your metabolism is increasing premenstrually. So you need these more calories. And all this bloating and this water retention will disappear as soon as you start menstruating. So knowing and having this information will help you keep at ease during the premenstrual phase. So you don't fall back, especially if you have an eating disorder or if you have a body image issue. Now coming to PMDD, I myself suffer from PMDD. I suspect that I had PMDD since 2014 or 2015, but I was only diagnosed in 2018. I went through 3 different kinds of therapies. I changed 2 treatments, lifestyle changes, had to quit alcohol, all of these things to not feel how I felt during my premenstrual phase. It was a very extreme thing for me, and most of you might have seen my posts on Instagram about my PMDD experiences, which really affected me to great extent. So PMDD is often misunderstood. When I say misunderstood, a lot of women or a lot of people think that it is a hormonal imbalance. But PMDD has nothing to do with hormonal imbalance. PMDD is when the natural rise and fall in estrogen and progesterone affects you so much that it gives you suicidal ideation, anxiety, binge eating, fatigue, bloating, breast tenderness, trouble sleeping, increased sensitivity to light. And you can actually get drunk faster and easier in your premenstrual phase as well because of that. If I have to describe PMDD effectively, I would say that because of this natural rise and fall of estrogen and progesterone, the individual with PMDD, their brain is literally having an allergic reaction and is responding by changing the neural pathways and how the hormones respond to neurotransmitters such as dopamine, because of which you see very intense suicidal ideation that women with PMDD experience. Women as well as assigned female at birth, more than 30% of them who are diagnosed or undiagnosed with PMDD will commit an act of suicide, which is why PMDD takes a lot of precedent right now, because suicides are 100% preventable deaths, and PMDD awareness is suicide prevention. Here we talk about origins of PMDD. Initially in DSM, it was called as late luteal phase dysphoric disorder because it came in the luteal phase. But the good news is in 2017, WHO recognized PMDD. But the best news is in 2019, PMDD was given an official code. And it was mentioned under essentially gynecological disorders, but that affect mood. So it was not called a mood disorder. It is not a mood disorder anymore. It's not classified as a mood disorder anymore. It's classified as some sort of gynecological disorder which affects your mood, because that's exactly what happens. Because your estrogen and progesterone sensitivity is leading you to experience all these emotions, they felt that it's important for gynecologists as well as mental health professionals to come together and diagnose. And by calling it or by putting it under the gynecological disorders, what it did was it legitimized PMDD such that even gynecologists can diagnose it. And one important thing here is that women often go to gynecologists when they experience PMDD than they go to mental health professionals, which is why this change was very welcome among International Association for Premenstrual Disorders, Vicious Cycle PMDD, Me versus PMDD, because this helped raise awareness, this helped raise diagnostic criteria. We can't say exactly what causes PMDD. So there are certain possible causes. One possible cause is that there is a certain variation in one receptor cell of one gene, which can make somebody sensitive to raise in estrogen and progesterone. Or they think it's the activation of brain circuits that because of the change in estrogen and progesterone, the different areas of brain get too activated or overstimulated, because of which women experience these symptoms. But currently, there's a ton of research that's happening. There's also a new drug that's specifically focusing on PMDD, because as of now, for PMDD, we only have two options: either take antidepressants or second, surgical menopause. There are a lot of women who have either taken surgical menopause or chemical menopause because they couldn't deal with their PMDD symptoms anymore. But in some rare cases, even when they removed their, or even when they had a hysterectomy or when they're under chemical menopause, women still did experience PMDD symptoms. One of the reasons why I keep saying women is because even though that assigned females at birth do experience PMDD, the studies conducted in scientific journals are essentially uses only female subjects. So that's the reason why I keep saying women instead of using a more inclusive term. And with respect to PME, when it comes to PME, it's not just mental health diseases, it's also physical diseases that can be exacerbated during your premenstrual phase. It can be acne, it can be constipation, any digestive disorders, migraines, joint pains. There's also a significant literature that says that, there's significant literature that says that diabetes, epilepsy.
We lost you again.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
All right. There's also
Now we can hear you.
Okay, lovely. There's also other medical conditions that impact in premenstrual phase that are not really researched into. So this is one of the reasons why we work with PME, is because if somebody has like underlying depression, they're more prone to either trying to kill themselves during the premenstrual phase. Women with OCD, anxiety disorders, they tend to overreact and they tend to lose their coping skills that they're learning in therapy during their premenstrual phase. Ideally, during the premenstrual phase, women must also increase their medicine dose a little more. So that is why we focus on PME, so that women with existing underlying condition can get better treatment plan to manage their symptoms in premenstrual phase. So the possible causes again are the relationship between the neuro and endocrine system. As we know that we have hormones that are fluctuating. These hormones affect our neurotransmitters, they affect our insulin levels, they affect our pituitary, anything our pituitary gland produces. So this complex interconnection between the female sex hormone and literally every other hormone in our body, which makes it very complex to understand what is the specific pathways that's affecting PMDD or PME. Finally, the thing I would like to stress upon is suicidal ideation and PMDD. Is women with PMDD usually have something called as passive suicidal ideation. It's that they just have this image or an idea as how to kill themselves, but they usually don't act upon it. But there is a process in which active suicidal ideation passive suicidal ideation becomes active. And that is when the real trouble comes. In suicidal ideation and PMDD, in fact, one of the biggest celebrity, Gia, in US, she actually killed herself because of PMDD. And that's how the International Association of Premenstrual Disorders started over her death. There is a lot of evidence that suggests that once the women with PMDD, once their suicidal ideation changes from passive to active, they are at peace, and they tend to make up the plan, like talk to their friends, have one last good meal, take your dog for a walk, clean up your house, things like that. And when you see somebody you know is diagnosed with PMDD being very calm and doing things that you usually don't expect them to do not think that, okay, they're feeling better. It's probably that they've made up their mind to kill themselves. So they are doing the last things that they want to do. So this is about premenstrual disorders and mental health. One of the things that I really want to highlight is that about period pain. Period pain has extensive impact on someone's mental health. It's not only because of the biological conditions, but it's also because of the medical gaslighting that women go through. You go to a doctor and you tell them that you have period pain, and then they just don't believe you. They medically literally gaslight you and tell you that either you're exaggerating or that it can't be that bad. But one of the things that we need to remember is that even after extensive research in medical and biological sciences, as well as psychology, the best way to assess somebody's pain is to asking them, rate your pain on scale 1 to 10. Because pain is subjective perception. So somebody cannot tell you it is normal. When you go tell them that you're in excruciating pain, you cannot take it. They cannot tell you it's normal, because it is not normal. And this medical gaslighting increases anxiety, because your period is going to come and you have this anxiety that you're going to feel pain, or you see the cyclical interaction between your period and your pain, and there's nothing you can do, and you feel like you're stuck in a vicious circle. So this causes anxiety, depression, that literally changes your brain pathways. Significant research, over 200 women they tested, and they found that their brain actually changed physically. And that's something very surprising, because we do understand that stress has effect on our brain pathways. But this cyclical pain is causing a specific neural pathway to change, which affects all other future tolerances and they think that it might also make women develop a central nervous system disorder, which again has increased risk for all other depressions in menopause phase or pregnancy, postpartum, all of this. So our mental health, believe it or not, is very much interconnected to our menstrual cycle and our menstrual experiences in itself, whether it is heavy bleeding, or whether it is excruciating and intense pain, or whether it is the lack of periods themselves. Because women need to ovulate to make hormones. When you're not ovulating, you're missing out on something called as the fifth vital sign. And because you're missing out on your fifth vital sign, you're not making hormones that help you feel happy, that help you to get up and get things done and be productive. So ovulation is as important as menstruation. And when you are on birth control pills, you're not ovulating and you're not menstruating. What you're experiencing is pill bleeds. So it's important to understand that when somebody is on birth control, that their mental health will also have significant impact on it. I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you so much for this informative presentation, and I could relate to it many a times, because as a pain and palliative physician, I have seen it even before I became palliative physician, even in my general practice, the dismissal of pain when a this woman is talking about. And also, there have been times where the male physicians would listen to them very compassionately and give time, and then later talk to us about how it actually could be somatic. So their inherent bias is that the person is overworked and hence they're venting and not diagnosing the underlying condition itself. So I've seen it in practice, and it's really good to hear from you as well. So I'll start with I have one or two questions for you. One is as a person who's experiencing PMDD yourself and who is a part
Yes.
of the support group. So, how important do you think the support groups are? And what do you think are the ways forward in Indian context where the diagnosis is not present literally, and then support groups also are not? So, how do we
All right. So there is a manual for self-diagnosis, but the problem with self-diagnosis is you can't reach out to a professional for treatment because you were not officially diagnosed. So that is a major problem with self-diagnosis, but there is a questionnaire that you can take to check whether you have PMDD or not. And for me, it was never self-diagnosis. I went to my GP and I was just talking to her and I just broke down crying in front of her saying that I cannot live like this anymore. I just want to kill myself and all of that stuff. And she just looked at me like so calmly and she said, I think you have PMDD. And that's like the first time I heard about PMDD. And then I was like, what is that? And she sat down and she explained and she put me on antidepressants. And this was all when I just moved to UK. And it was very, very intense for me to experience all of the emotions that I was feeling at that point of time. But luckily, I had wonderful support. Either it was from friends or even from the university. The university officially recognized my PMDD and gave me permission to write my exams 2 months later. And apart from that, I did have an excellent partner as well, who was extremely supportive. Even it was the very beginning of our relationship, in fact, and he was really supportive when it came to my PMDD. There were times when I didn't want to go to therapy, and he would encourage me to just go ahead and because I would get work. The therapist would give me some work to do, like some sort of homework or a workbook, and I wouldn't have done it, so that's why I didn't want to go. And he would be like, it's not your class, she's not gonna like yell at you, just go ahead. And therapy has really helped me resolve a lot of things because it was so hard to even get out of bed. And I still remember my physical symptoms were even so bad. We were solving some equations in class and my friend playfully threw a marker at me and it hit my breast. And I just, like, eyes were just watering. I mean, I didn't mean to cry. It's just that, I was in so much pain. And, I couldn't work out. I couldn't jump. I couldn't dance. I love dancing. I couldn't do all of these things because my breasts were in pain, like, almost all the time. It took me almost 7.5 months to actually resolve the symptoms. The physical symptoms somehow took longer for me than the effective or emotional symptoms. But support system, in terms of peer support, when I went on Instagram and was just like, I have PMDD, I just got diagnosed, I don't know what to do, I got this outpouring support from PMDD peeps. It's a hashtag that PMDD peeps use. So when there's this newbie who comes and tells that, okay, I think I have PMDD, I don't know where to start. I mean, the community is wonderful. They give you all these messages and all these things, and they tell you, it's first, anything you try might not work first. Just go ahead and do something. Everybody's journey is different. And the support you get from the peer group and the support that you get from your own friends who do not experience PMDD and the support I got from my family as well was extremely overwhelming, which really helped me get there. But there were times when I found the support itself very annoying because I'm like, who the hell are you to tell me to just, cheer up when I am feeling down because you're not the one who have PMDD. But obviously I kept those comments to myself. It was a very intense experience because I think it was a bit traumatizing for me as well, because I remember in 2014 and 15, I used to cry premenstrually while eating and saying that, oh my God, I've put on so much weight. I accept that I have a ton of body image issues because I was an athlete growing up, and I was always obsessed with the idea of, a fit body, which shattered obviously once I was diagnosed with PMDD. I gained about 15 plus kgs. So I'm getting somewhere because I started working out right now. So let's hope that I won't get too obsessed with having an idea of perfect body, and more towards, my mental health. That is my experience with PMDD, honestly.
Thank you for sharing so vulnerably. How does the support group work in the international body that you work in?
Yeah, International Association for Premenstrual Disorders. So what happened is, once your PMDD is under control, you can enroll to be a peer support provider. Then you go through a course to understand your place as a peer support provider and how to help people. And after you finish the course, you'll have a test and a practice test where someone from the peer support will pretend that, they are the person seeking for help. And once you pass that in flying colors, we go on intercom. Intercom is where we receive messages from women who are seeking help. So they can just go onto the PMDD website and just type in the saying that, whatever they're feeling, and we help them out. We either give them information with helping them get a diagnosis, or help them with treatment, show them the treatment options, add them to the Facebook groups or the chats where there are other women sharing experiences. And the same person usually takes up, so in order with the same peer support seeker, so that there is a relationship that's maintained. In case if we do something called ladder risk assessment. If we feel that the person is at high risk to kill herself, then we escalate it to somebody else who is a professional in the network itself, so they can take care of it, because we are not equipped to deal with that. So we constantly do the risk assessment to check their risk levels. If their risk levels are high, we do not handle. We directly send them to a professional. That's how it works.
Thank you. I would have, extended this some more, but we have already passed our time, and I hope we can have another session only with question and answers, because there are a lot of questions even in my mind. But one thing which you have pointed out, which I will use as a point to wrap this conversation up, is the lack of, even among cis women, having them as subjects for medical research is very well known, how less it is, and how drugs which were tested on cis men are used generically. But also you pointed out that in the study where menstruators have to be included, it is generally referred as women, and people identifying as women are enrolled into it.
Yes.
Troublesome.
And it's often only heterosexual women that are taken for some reason.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, feeling frustrated about this, we will end this session. Thank you so much, Anuya. I will send you a list of questions. If you could answer them, we could publish it as an interview, like a written interview, for the people who will watch it later. Because I'm sure many a times we see that people come back and then watch the live recording. So I'm sure it will be a good handout to go along with it. And also, I will, if you could share the self-assessment copy, I'll post it there, and your email ID.
I'll just send you a link.
Right. So all that will be posted along with the description. So that's it from my end. Thank you for everyone who came in live on Zoom and who are watching live on Facebook. We'll keep having more interactions like this with professionals. Thank you so much, Anukia. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye.